Pausing. You've definitely done this hundreds of times in your playthrough of Ocarina of Time, or any Zelda game really. Pressing the start button brings up the pause menu, which allows you to equip items to the C buttons, swap pieces of equipment, and manually save your progress. With the various items you collect and swap out, pausing is absolutely required to beat Ocarina of Time. Or is it? Ocarina of Time is a pretty broken game after all, so I wanted to try to beat Ocarina of Time without pressing that pesky start button, no bringing up the pause screen, playing it on an actual Nintendo 64 with the original controller and an original 1.0 cartridge of the game. This one's Japanese, although you can do this on a 1.0 North American copy as well. As soon as you boot up the game, we are greeted by our first obstacle, the title screen. It says, press start. But this is a non-issue, since you could just press A to start the game instead. I started a fresh file and named Link Zero Pause, watched the opening cutscene, and exited Link's house in Kokiri Forest, where I faced the first true obstacle, escaping. Normally, in order to progress, we need to equip a sword and shield in order to enter the Deku Tree, the game's first dungeon. We can easily obtain the Kokiri sword from the nearby maze and buy the Deku shield for 40 rupees at the shop, but oh no! We need to pause the game to manually equip the sword and shield to bypass Mido. Dang, I guess you can't get anywhere in this game without pausing, is what I would say if we couldn't just escape the forest and skip the Deku Tree. That's right, we're gonna leave Kokiri Forest without beating the Deku Tree. Over the past 16 years, there have been many methods found to leave the forest early, and out of all of them, there is only one way to escape without pausing to equip an item, and it's thanks to this rock. On February 17th, 2019, glitch hunter Jolin proved that it was possible to escape the forest itemless without cheats, using a rock to clip past the guard blocking the exit, no pausing required. However, it is very precise, down to 1,000th of a unit for Link's position, and a specific facing angle as well. From this very specific position and angle, you need to throw the rock, hold down on the analog stick mid-throw, press Z on the correct frame to initiate a backwalk, and right when the rock falls right on Link's coordinates, you press A to talk to the guard. If done correctly, Link's displacement from the falling rock pushing him, combined with a few more units of displacement in the opposite direction when talking to the guard, is enough to clip past him. From there, you can roll under the guard and be on your merry way. This trick is nothing short of a miracle, and was made possible thanks to the efforts of OOT community members such as Blinny, Rosewater, Danny B, and Natalia Has Died. Many of them have computer science and programming backgrounds, which are useful skills to have when glitch hunting, and to gain a deeper understanding of a game's mechanics. If these are skills that interest you, check out boot.dev, the sponsor of today's video. Boot.dev is a programming bootcamp that combines education along with the engaging elements of an RPG. As someone that was in college during lockdown in 2020, I found myself really bored and inattentive as my classes switched to an online format. Boot.dev, on the other hand, sets out to tackle this problem. As you learned back-end development in the Python and Go languages, you'll earn XP, level up, and you can even accept quests to complete on a global leaderboard. After all, the smartest way to learn how to code is to make it not boring, but to make the Boot.dev online course a self-paced experience that feels like a captivating RPG game. The platform is designed to get you writing a ton of code, because getting your hands on the keyboard and shipping products is really the only way to learn. To get started, simply click the link in the description below and use my code LunaticJ to get 25% off of your first payment, whether that be the first month or the first year. Thanks again for Boot.dev for sponsoring today's video. Now, the discovery of itemless escape was great and all, but how can you expect a human to pull this off? It's one thing to have a couple double frame perfect inputs with the rock throw itself, but getting into position is a whole other problem. Again, for this itemless escape to work, you need to be in the correct position down to 1,000th of a unit, along with the correct facing angle. For years, there was no semi-consistent method to get in a position for the rock throw, until November 2nd, 2023, when Cadmic found a consistent setup that, while still difficult, was quick and much more realistic for a human to pull off. The setup to pick up the rock in the correct position was easy, but it gets tricky from here. After picking up the rock, I held Z and flicked the stick down so Link moves slightly back for a couple frames. I then fully turned left. Now, it is time for the small ESS turns, where I briefly tap the stick in ESS position, the smallest range outside of the analog stick's dead zone, to rotate Link ever so slightly. One ESS to the right, then two ESS up, which is so subtle you wouldn't notice unless you had a memory viewer for the facing angle visible. Finally, one ESS left, and then it's time to hold up, walking forward at full speed until I need to let go of the stick completely on the correct frame to get into the exact position for the rock throw. Needless to say, this took a lot of practice to get down. I initially started learning this a couple months ago in the practice room at AGDQ 2024, playing on GZ, the practice ROM developed by Glenk. GZ has features such as save states and memory watches that allowed for more efficient practice, and for me to view my position and facing angle values as I was learning the trick. Once I was comfortable enough, I took off the training wheels, now using the texture details near Link's feet to tell if I was in the correct position. I moved from practicing the different segments of the trick in isolation to chaining everything together. Some days, it would take me a while to nail itemless escape during attempts, but with enough practice, it eventually paid off.
Side rolls. I think I'll be much more organized when I script this out, because this will be a post-commentated video. Getting here is the easy part. Upcoming is the hard part of the trick. Flick back for a couple frames, ESS left to turn perfectly 90 degrees or so. One ESS turn to the right. Two up that are very subtle, you can't even see. Then we have to hold up and let go on the correct frame so we land on just the right unit. Okay, this looks good. This looks good. No way! Holy shit! Oh my god! The practice paid off! Let's go! We're only 3 minutes in and we got out! We're already out of the forest.
Mind you, this is only the first trick of the Zero Pause challenge, and I personally find it only the third hardest one I had to do. Also, if you end up enjoying watching this challenge to the very end, don't forget to subscribe, because we're just getting started. Upon exiting Kokiri Forest to Hyrule Field, Saria gives us the Fairy Ocarina, which will become very important later on. But for now, we have a new objective: head to Hyrule Castle Town. To ensure we make it to the drawbridge before sundown, we will backwalk, which is faster than walking forward and rolling. By climbing the drawbridge chains and hopping off, we can begin grinding rupees, as we'll need at least 95. Once I got 95 rupees, I headed for the shop and oh no! It's nighttime and the shop is closed! At least, that's what it looks like. The door may be locked, but by doing a little tricky jump off of this nearby crate, we can clip past the door and enter. Here, we use the 95 rupees to buy a Hylian shield and Deku nuts. Both of these will be very important, as you'll soon see. After leaving the shop, there's nothing really left to do as Child Link, as we can't pause to equip any items. So I headed to the Temple of Time to perform Door of Time Skip. You're probably familiar with this trick if you've watched a speedrun, but you might have seen people do it with a sword. It's also possible to skip the Door of Time without a sword, found by Mr. Grunz in October 2011, but it is much harder. First, you do a quick setup for the angle in the left corner. Then, you input a side roll by holding the analog stick partially down while holding Z and pressing A. Then, at the correct time, you hold back all the way and press A to input a backwards side hop, and then let go of everything. Once Link clips through, you have to repress Z to target the side of the Door of Time on the correct frame, which will transfer your side hop momentum into that wall, allowing you to shimmy around the Door of Time and reach the Master Sword early. After pulling the Master Sword, Link will become an adult, now that 7 years have passed. One of the first things you'll notice once you regain control of Link is that there are a few items automatically equipped. The Master Sword is on the B button, and since I bought the Hylian shield, that is also equipped. Deku Nuts are on C left since I bought them as young Link. If I didn't buy them, C left would be blank. C down has the bomb icon with 0 bombs, as the game expected me to have grabbed the bomb bag as a child, even though I completely skipped it, and the ocarina is on C right. This is why I grabbed the ocarina, as well as bought the Hylian shield and nuts as child. These items are automatically equipped when you become adult Link for the first time, if you have them. This is the case for every casual playthrough of vanilla Ocarina of Time, and next time you play through the game and reach this part, keep an eye out for that. Details aside, these are the only items we'll have equipped for the rest of the challenge, and with the exception of bombs, they are all important for beating the game without the pause screen. So, let's make our way out of the Temple of Time and, uh-oh, the door of time was never opened. I'm trapped. The easiest way out is to save the game and reload your save file, as saving outside of a dungeon as an adult will spawn Link at the entrance of the Temple of Time. But hold it! We can't pause the game to save the game. That's against the rules. However, there is still a way to save the game without pausing. Death. By performing a very easy out-of-bounds clip by jump slashing at this acute angled corner, I can void out, losing 1 heart each time until Link dies. Here, the game will display 2 prompts. Do you want to save? To which I answer yes. And do you want to continue playing? To which I answer no. This puts me back at the title screen, where I can select my save file and exit the Temple of Time. At this point, you may be wondering how I'm going to reach the end of the game and defeat Ganon, especially since I can't equip new items to clear many dungeons, nor would I be able to equip light arrows to stun Ganondorf. The answer is actually the wrong warp from Gohma's boss room in the Deku Tree to the Ganon's tower collapse sequence at the end of the game. On paper, it's an obvious solution if you're lightly familiar with OOT speedrunning, since you'd only need to beat the Deku Tree, which doesn't require many items, and it bypasses needing the light arrows for Ganondorf, as the tower collapse takes place after the Ganondorf fight. This wrong warp is known as Ganondor, and was the big speedrun strat in any percent for several years. However, in that context, the trick was performed as Child Link using a bottle with bugs to activate a glitch known as Ocarina items, which allows you to play a fake ocarina on the edge of a blue warp that normally teleports you out of the dungeon. This activates the blue warp, but allows you to still control Link, and if you exit the door from the Gohma boss room back to the Deku Tree basement, on the same frame as the game is supposed to take you away, Link spawns in the Ganon's Tower Collapse interior. With the real ocarina equipped to C right, this eliminates the need to get a bottle and perform ocarina items. Except that normally, the ocarina cannot be used in boss rooms. This definitely complicates things, but there is a solution to all of this. But for now, let's get back to where I was. I exited the Temple of Time and made a quick stop to Kakariko Village, where I talked to the Cucko lady where she gave me the pocket egg, which kicks off the Big Goron Sword trade quest. This seems odd since I won't be able to equip it, but it'll be important later. Just trust the process. After getting the egg, I made my way back to Kokiri Forest, but waited until nighttime. This is because I was headed for the Deku Tree, which is normally inaccessible as an adult. But since this is Ocarina of Time, there is a way, pauseless at that. On the way, I slayed the giant Deku Baba near the forest entrance to max out my Deku Nuts, got rid of an annoying Octorok, and then got ISG, the Infinite Sword Glitch. When reading a sign mid-crouch stab, the sword will begin to have a white glow, swinging infinitely. This prevents Link from walking off ledges, which allows Link to hover in the air when shielding damage. Hovering is normally done using explosives as a damage source, but since I had none, I used the gold Skulltula on the roof of the twins' house instead. I used a setup from Kairu, where I did 2 quick hovers off of the Skulltula into a mega flip that allowed me to navigate out of bounds, and past a loading plane that separated the town section from the Deku Tree area of Kokiri Forest. This keeps the Deku Tree unloaded, meaning I could just waltz right in. Inside the Deku Tree, my main obstacle from reaching the boss room at the bottom are 2 spiderwebs, one that separates the ground floor from the first basement, and another one that blocks access to the second basement level. The first one can be easily broken by climbing to the top and dropping down. The second, on the other hand, requires a fire source for it to burn away, which normally isn't an issue, since you can just use a lit Deku stick to burn the web, but I was playing on N64, where trying to use sticks as an adult crashes the game. Not that I can equip them anyways, since I would need to pause. I needed to go about it differently, and thankfully, quick put away would do the trick. In March 2020, glitch hunter and OOT bingo champion, Exodus, discovered a way to light torches and burn webs without a fire source. When Link is holding a Deku stick, you can press A to put it away when the put away text appears. However, if this put away is interrupted a frame later from something like taking damage or hanging off of a ledge, you can then jump slash to break the stick against a wall, and whenever you do a crouch stab with the sword afterwards, that stab will have a glitched damage value with many properties, most notably the ability to ignite torches and webs. A year later, on October 1st, 2021, Hylian and Freddy discovered a way to activate this property of quick put away without Deku sticks on version 1.0, and Dotso would develop consistent setups for it. By walking off a ledge holding the analog stick only halfway so that the put away text doesn't disappear, you press A to put away a frame after walking off, and then B a frame later to interrupt the put away animation with a jump slash. If done correctly, you can hear the sound of Link putting away the sword as he jump slashes.
Like there. See that, like, swipe sound? That knows how it got it. And then I stab, and my sword suddenly has fire properties that I can burn through the web.
This is also why I'm specifically playing on a version 1.0 cartridge. On the back label of the cartridge, you can see some numbers punched in. If there's a letter A after the two numbers, you have version 1.1. If there's a letter B, you have version 1.2. And if you have two numbers with no letter, you have version 1.0. Even if the numbers happen to be 1-1, like my cartridge. I used quick put away to burn both spiderwebs and made my way to Goma. When you enter the fight, a stone slab falls, blocking the way you came from. I want to get rid of the stone slab for the wrong warp later on, but I also don't want to exit the boss room using the blue warp after defeating Goma. It is possible to pause the game, save, reset, and reload the save file to leave the room after beating Goma, where returning to the room gets rid of the slab, but this is a no-pause run. So instead, I jump slashed onto Goma for the killing blow, so I would go down with her. Upon dying, I would save and continue playing, respawning back at the dungeon entrance. I then leave, because even though I still could return to the Goma boss room with no stone slab blocking the door, I still wouldn't be able to use the Ocarina to perform the wrong warp. In order to use the Ocarina there are quite a few hoops to jump through. Now, what does that entail? You'll see. Oh boy, you'll see. I made my way to Lost Woods, where a simple clip into the slab allows me to use the shortcut to Zora's River without the silver scale. Here, I made my way to Zora's Domain, but a waterfall blocked the entrance, and you'd usually play Zelda's Lullaby to open the path. But since I haven't learned Zelda's Lullaby, I'd have to get past it in the same manner as I did to enter the Deku Tree, by unloading it. I accomplished this using a method found by Exodus in 2011, where I did a simple ledge clip near this ladder and began to swim out of bounds. Using the minimap in the bottom right corner as my guide, I swam past this wooden bridge, where if I did it correctly, I would be standing in the current, and the waterfall would be unloaded. This was a bit annoying, as it's easy to accidentally fall out of the water and void out. Not to mention, if you try this at low health, you'll run out of air faster and likely drown. This happened at least once, where I saved the game after dying, meaning that if I reset my console, I would be back at the Temple of Time, closer to the entrance of Zora's River. This was about to come in handy, as the next stretch of the route is brutal. Once I unloaded the waterfall, the geometry near Zora's Domain entrance was invisible, so I had to do a setup to get inside, and I actually found it quite fun.
To get up, navigate invisible, we're gonna side hop, walk forward, grab the ledge, climb up until we can't walk anymore, crouch stab, shield turn left, retarget, jump up, immediately hold right while I'm jumping up to grab onto the ladder, retarget, ESS turn right, and then two little turns, 1, 2, I think that was 2, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2 backflips. 1 side hop right. Oh wait, I wasn't supposed to backflip there. Whoops, I was supposed to walk. Whoops, my bad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2. 1 side hop and then walk here. Welcome to Ocarina of Time.
This next part, however, was the opposite. Entering Zora's domain, I did a simple trick to unfreeze King Zora without blue fire, found by Sockfolder in April 2012. Now that he's frozen, I can talk to him to get the Zora's tunic, which would allow me to breathe underwater. Except that's not what happened. I had my fingers crossed, and I got the eyeball frog instead. Okay, I didn't actually cross my fingers. I just held R. Lol. The eyeball frog is normally one of the last items you obtain in the Big Goron Sword quest, yet holding R when talking to a newly unfrozen King Zora on versions 1.0 or 1.1 give us the eyeball frog, as long as we had started the trade quest with that egg anyways. Originally discovered by accident by a speedrunner, Jarvitz, during a race in September 2012, Glitch Hunter MZX Rules would then figure out how it worked. To keep it simple, holding R delays collecting the Zora tunic for a few frames, after which the game assumes it gave you the tunic already, so it then gives you the other item King Zora can give you, the frog. The frog is important since it has an expiration timer, as in the trade quest, you need to deliver it to the scientist at the Lake Hylia lab as ingredients for eye drops in 3 minutes before it spoils. We are not going to Lake Hylia though. We are going to Lon Lon Ranch, since I didn't get the frog to complete the trade quest. I got it because of the timer. I collected 10 rupees on the way to Lon Lon Ranch, and once I arrived, I lined up Link for a very easy out of bounds clip. Here, I side hopped out of bounds when the timer hit 7 seconds, and when the timer expired, I voided out before the text saying I ran out of time cleared, which would have taken me back to Zora's domain. Instead, after respawning from voiding out, I'm back at the Lon Lon Ranch entrance with a timer frozen at 0 seconds. I needed this frozen timer to activate the glitch that would allow me to use the ocarina in boss rooms. Windy Bee. Whenever you go to Lon Lon Ranch as an adult and pay Ingo 10 rupees to ride a horse, every C button will be dimmed, meaning you cannot use any equipable items. Any item except for one, the ocarina. Around 2007, Glitch Hunter Kazooie discovered that if you used another glitch, Bottle Adventure, to get Furore's Wind on the B button, you can set a warp point somewhere and use Furore's Wind to escape the Ingo minigame. This had some notable side effects, such as not being able to use any item equipped to C buttons except the ocarina, and being able to use the ocarina and your B button item anywhere in the game. There are some annoying side effects though. If you enter a swimming state, or climb vines or ladders, your B button will be disabled until you die or reset the game. Doing so deactivates Windy Bee. Since I do not have Furore's Wind, I used a different method to activate Windy Bee. After paying for the horse riding minigame, I reach the last text box before the screen fades to white. During this fade out, I have to close the text box by pressing A or B on the last frame before the screen completely fades to white. That's right, in order for me to do this trick, I have to time a frame perfect A press. And if I miss, I have to set the trick up all over again. Press A too early, and you'll be stuck in the minigame. Press A too late, and you'll be back in Zora's domain without Windy Bee. But if I time it just right...
Ooh, we got it! Yeehaw!
I warp back to Zora's domain with Windy Bee active with the ranch minigame music playing. During one of my attempts, I managed to nail Windy Bee on my first try that day. Unfortunately for me, I did a stupid and fell into swimmable water, dimming my B button. So I had to reset back from my last save, which was all the way back in Deku Tree after beating Goma. I was really upset, and my luck wasn't going to get better for a bit. This is easily the most tedious part of the challenge, as, surprise surprise, Getting a frame-perfect trick is not easy, especially when you have to spend 10 minutes setting it up all over again. I would often go an hour or more without getting Windy Bee a single time, but when I did, I felt relieved. That was just the beginning, however, as what comes after Windy Bee is probably the hardest part of the challenge, and having crazy nerves after every single successful Windy Bee attempt didn't help. After getting Windy Bee, I carefully navigate Zora's River, and then go back to Kakariko. I then enter the graveyard for the first time, and then immediately leave. In order for the wrong warp to work later, the last cutscene I view before doing the Ganondorf wrong warp has to be one that won't cause a soft lock. This matters because when you perform this wrong warp, the last viewed cutscene is programmed to play, and if Link's coordinates during said cutscene is out of bounds when imposed in the tower's collapse interior map, that causes a soft lock. The last cutscene I viewed during the Windy Bee setup was entering Lon Lon Ranch for the first time, which soft locks the wrong warp later. The graveyard doesn't, so once I left the graveyard, I headed back to Kokiri Forest. At night. I did the Gold Skulltula Mega Flip again to enter the Deku Tree, and carefully made it down to the boss room again without dimming B. The wrong warp with Windy Bee is easily the most stressful part, as having Deku Nuts disabled in particular makes the setup a bit trickier. Without any consistent setups at my disposal, this was easily the trick I struggled with the most, and failing it meant resetting back to my last save before entering Zora's River. This happened a lot, and it was frustrating, heartbreaking, soul-crushing. The setups I found of Ganondorf under these specific Windy Bee conditions were unsatisfactory, as many of them relied on quick changes on the analog stick direction. The setups also assumed that the sword couldn't be used due to a dimmed B button. This was problematic, as in order to get the wrong warp to work, I needed to fully exit the room on the same frame as the blue warp is supposed to take Link away. Eventually, enough was enough, and I began to do more searching. That's when I stumbled upon, you guessed it, a sock folder setup from 2012. Here, I found an unbuffered Ganondorf setup as adult that used a sword slash, which allowed me to buffer a new analog stick direction, which made it very lenient. The only difference was instead of using Ocarina items, I modified the setup slightly to accommodate the actual Ocarina. It was still tricky, and I failed it a few times, but eventually...
That was scary. I'm not sure if this will work. Oh my gosh! It worked! Oh, holy crap. Oh my gosh, this is the run. This is it. This is it. We finally made it through the wrong warp.
I broke through. I had made it to Ganon's tower collapse without pressing start. Following this, I did an intentional death and disabled Windy Bee, making sure I didn't accidentally save. Escaping the castle was effortless, but the Ganon fight, not so much. Upon starting the final fight with Ganon, the Master Sword is knocked out of Link's hands. Well, crap. I didn't get the Big Goron Sword, or any other obvious items to damage Ganon during this phase, like the hammer or the bow and arrow. Not that I could equip them anyways, since I'm not pausing. Seemingly defenseless, it appears that beating Ganon in this state is just impossible. That is, if it weren't for the Deku Nuts. Yeah, that's right. You can actually hurt Ganon using Deku Nuts if you roll behind him and aim for the tail. 10 nuts is enough to end phase 1. Afterwards, I grab the Master Sword, which I use for phase 2. This is pretty easy, but can be very scary since you die in one hit with 3 hearts. And in case I die, I can't refill my nuts easily. I got very tense, and I even used the remaining nuts to temporarily stun Ganon to play it extra safe. Eventually, Ganon fell, and with one more swing of my blade, I had beaten Ocarina of Time without pausing the game and without pressing start. This was a fairly difficult challenge run, albeit more tedious and punishing than absurdly difficult. But I am honored to be the second human ever to complete a zero pause run of Ocarina of Time. Yeah, that's right, I wasn't the first. In fact, this was not a challenge run I came up with myself, just one that I wanted to try and show off to you guys. Back in 2019, just days after the itemless forest escape was found, a low optimization tool assisted demonstration, or LOTAD, of Zero Pause premiered on ZFG's Twitch stream on February 21st, as part of an annual tradition known as LOTAD Day on his channel. The Zero Pause LOTAD was made by OMG A Tree and Kaztalek, and followed a route developed by Natalia Has Died and Moose. Without their great minds, as well as others like Blinny, Jolin, Danny B, Rosewater, and many others, Zero Pause probably wouldn't be possible. After the LOTAD premiere, it would take another 4.5 years for Grego to complete the first ever Zero Pause completion by a human, following Cadmic's force escape setup and the discovery of Quick Put Away's fire properties. Grego even improved the Deku Tree route himself using Quick Put Away. I merely followed his guide, which I have linked in the video description below, in case you want to give this challenge a try. Although I completed a Zero Pause playthrough, I'm not quite satisfied. My first completion took 7 hours across multiple sittings, mostly consisting of failing Windy B, unlike Grego, who completed the run in 1 hour and 5 minutes, in one sitting. When I decide to tackle this challenge again, I plan to complete it in one sitting, and then I want to take it under 1 hour. I plan to complete it in one sitting so I can submit it onto the new leaderboard. If you're interested in seeing me tackle these kind of challenge runs and speedruns live, please follow me at twitch.tv/LunaticJ. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to shoot for the moon.